I haven't entirely made up my mind what I want to do with it.
Okay.
My frustration has been obviously, the world being on fire right now up here in Cave Creek. That means
Yeah.
ranchland and everything else. It's not just down in the city. But a lot of my friends and family are doing the Blackout Tuesday with their social media profiles, which is, something. Uh, I've got other friends who are pushing back on the phrase white privilege because I don't think they understand it.
Yes.
And I just got to, it just made me sort of sad, really, because I'm recognizing that even though you and I have known each other for several years now and have done business together. You've sent me employment clients. And although I've worked on this issue obliquely, it's always been way after the fact, right? It's always been in the sense of trying to help somebody who's already been victimized by either a company or the system or something. And the front end of everything that happens is still shrouded in a degree of mystery for me because I'm a middle-aged white guy and I'm not gonna see the same stuff. And so I wanted to invite you first, and I was realizing as I thought through, I've got other friends and clients and even some fellow law students from back when I was in law school that I can talk to. But you were the first person I thought of, and I wanted to ask you, I sent them to you ahead of time. I wanted to ask you some of those questions that frankly will educate me. And when I talk to my white friends and family who are struggling with how to grapple with these issues,
Yeah.
and not just make it up out of my own head, but hear from somebody that I know and trust and I believe would have some good insight for me to share.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah. So, yeah, no, I give some insight. I mean, I'm speaking for, my experiences and, things that I heard, but
Sure.
I guess the one thing I want to, let people know is that, I mean, within the African-American race, there's different, perspectives on everything, different, religions, different political affiliations. So sometimes I feel like people just lump people together, all at once. But no, I mean, we're diverse just like everybody else. And sometimes I might have more in common with somebody of a different race than I have in my own race in certain circumstances. So it all depends.
Sure. Well, and to that end, and I didn't say your name when we started, but
okay.
Benjamin Taylor. He's a lawyer here in Phoenix, like me, and I want you to share a little bit, like what would you want people to know about you, not just as Benjamin Taylor, but as a lawyer or any civic-minded citizen and everything else you got going on.
Yeah, no, I'm Benjamin Taylor. I'm a lawyer here in Phoenix. I mean, basically, we practice criminal defense, personal injury, car accidents, and my law partner does family law also, divorces, and basically, we just try to do good for our clients here in Arizona. So that's a little bit about myself. I went to undergrad here, Arizona State University. I was a finance majored in finance. Did some finance work with the government and with a small corporation called Reuters. It's not small, but it's pretty much big and global. But we had a small affiliate out here. Did some work for them. Then decided, to go to law school, and went to law school and came back here to practice law. So
how long of a delay was it between undergrad and law school for you?
Probably about a year or two. It wasn't that.
Okay.
It was pretty much just a small delay.
Okay. In one of the things as I visited with some other African American friends that has always mystified me was this idea that there's extra training that goes into growing up as an African American, and what I mean by that is, we're all taught look both ways before you cross the street, stop on red, go on green, all the things that allow us to get along in the world. And then I've had friends share that they got an extra layer because of where they lived in the country or in the city or anything else, that there were certain additional rules like, never look a white woman in the eye in a store. I mean, just amazing things that had never crossed my mind. Did you have that experience growing up? Are there things that you had to learn either the hard way or by somebody in your family or community telling you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was lucky to have two parents, and my parents are from Texas. They're from East Texas. And I don't know if everybody heard of Texarkana, Texas, but it's on the border of
was born in
They go
Fort
to
Worth.
Arkansas and Texas. So they grew up in the Texas side, and they grew up during
Okay.
the segregation era. So growing up during there, especially African Americans were bused to different schools.
Right.
So my parents, they lived in the school that they could go to was probably less than a block away. But because they were African American, they had to be bused miles away to a totally different school because of segregation. So when you grow up with that mentality, that makes you, wonder the whole, separate but equal mindset with the law and with Brown versus Board of Education. It came through that, separate wasn't unequal, so you had to, merge everybody together. But growing up with that mentality, yes, I mean, I had rules as African American, which you would not do. I mean, people don't know, maybe you may not know about the story of Emmett Till. Emmett Till was an African American young man who allegedly whistled at a white woman. The white woman accused him of doing that. Later comes out, Emmett Till was, murdered, pretty much beat up and killed. Years later, right before the woman's death, she confesses that it was a false story and it was all made up. So those are the type of stories that you learn growing up. And yeah, you're very careful around women in general, and just, be aware of, white people, because growing up, a lot of times, unfortunately, African Americans have had bad experiences, so they are a little cautious. So around certain people.
Right. Yeah, I remember I was a little further west in Texas, but I remember hearing those stories of what happened in Jasper, Texas, and those were, as a white teenager growing up there, those were just as far removed from me as I might have well been reading about them in the history books, in terms of personal experience at that time, but just still stunning to reflect about and hear about today. Well, let's talk about a fun one then. The phrase white privilege, I hear quite a bit. My wife was engaged on social media not too long, and somebody had really reacted to her use of the phrase white privilege. And the reason for that was because they didn't feel very privileged. They were white, but they'd had some bad experiences here and there, and just it really made them angry to hear that phrase. And all I can think of is that it's because there's still a huge level of misunderstanding as to when the African American community uses that phrase. I feel like it means something different than it does when a white person hears it. A white person hears it as an accusation or something. But I want to hear your thoughts on what that phrase means to you, and put some meat on those bones, so to speak. So when people think about it, they've got some new perspective to hear it and say, okay, I can see where that applies.
Yeah, I mean, basically, a lot of times people say white privilege is when you walk into a store and somebody's walking around and you're shopping, right? Somebody may or may not, judge a person who's white because they're, white. Whereas a lot of times African Americans have said that they've been followed in stores, or maybe even accused of stealing when they're just looking at the item. And you go on social media, you'll see, instances of that. People talk about that. So I guess mainly white privilege is the privilege of, just being white. And when you're white, is this automatically, you might be right. So that's why I said, when you're white, you might be right. Whereas African American, you might get questioned more. I mean, personally, I can give you one of my personal experiences as an attorney. If you settle a pretty decent case, it's a nice sum of check, and it has to go into your trust account, and that goes to your client and everything. And sometimes when you go to the banking, sometimes bankers are kind of young, and they don't know that this could be legit money. so sometimes they might question the white person, because they might say, okay, this person's an attorney. Let me just deposit the check.
He's got his driver's license.
Excuse me?
He's got his driver's license.
Yeah, his driver's license, he's legit. Whereas, but African Americans, the white privilege comes in, is that African American, you might get questioned. Where did the money come from? And we understand that bankers do have to verify some things, but your questioning might be a lot longer, and you might see the teller typing on the thing a lot longer and stalling and getting the manager over, and it's like, why is it taking like 10 minutes to cash this check? Whereas the person right next to you might be in and out. So those are like little things of the white privilege where sometimes white people might get the benefit of the doubt. And we as African Americans might have to prove ourselves in order just to be in the same arena. So that's where the term white privilege, I would say, meaning.
When I first started doing employment law, which was really about 7 years ago at this point, and I think we had to have met soon after that. I don't remember how soon after that, but it was pretty close. And I remember my absolute horror to find out that the use of racial slurs and stereotypes in the worst possible way is a practice that is still alive and well in Arizona. Not universally in Arizona, obviously, but pockets of it, certain industries, certain companies where it's as if nothing has changed in 100 years. Personally, have you? I would surmise that there are a lot of white folks who really don't think that that's as prevalent out there as it still is. Have you personally been the target of racial slurs, to your face and that sort of thing in the recent past, and what do you do with that?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I played football in high school and sports. Somebody might on the football field might just say something, and you might just push them back or something like that. So targeted, but my friends, have been like targeted. I mean, just recently, with all this stuff that's going on, I had a friend, his wife was jogging, and a truck pulled up and said the N-word, to her and everything, and just drove off. So things like that. I mean, I've been pretty fortunate enough. I'm kind of low key, so I'm not really out there that much. I pretty much go to work, go home,
Right.
like that type of stuff. But I've been pretty fortunate enough, not directly to my face in an incident where I had to feel for my life, but I'm sure people's called me stuff behind my back, and when I'm not looking or after I talk to them and walk away, you never know that. But I guess, it does happen, and it still happens even to this day.
Yeah. In that vein, and this has been my big struggle, is to say, given the fact that it's still here, that it's still persisting, and we haven't fixed it, and we can talk about what the it actually is as well, but in the interim time, I'm wrestling with what are the helpful things for the white community to do. For example, and we talked about this a little bit ago, I've got a lot of friends who are doing the blacked out social media profiles, which again, on the surface, for folks who don't live in the racism world, that may feel like great solidarity. I have no idea, sitting here today, if that registers at all with the African American community. Does that, when you see a white person who's posted or hashtag Black Lives Matter, or who has blacked out their social media profile, does that do anything for you on the inside to say, okay, the world is changing? Or does it feel like too little, too late, too little, period? What does that do inside for you when you see people trying to participate in that fashion?
No, I believe it feels good, because a lot of people in the African American community feel that certain white people don't understand what Black people struggle. And I think a lot of people think, okay, this is the Black person complaining again. This is the Black person using the race card again. They're just thinking, they're Black and they can't get up in society. And we have to admit, some people do use that, but there's a lot of people who can't get up, because you do, you do employment law, Josh. So you understand that in the real world, there's some people who are qualified, who are African Americans, who are applying and better than their counterparts, and they still can't, bust, through the glass ceiling. So It does happen. But when I see the post, I love it, right? Because I think in order to solve this problem and come together, we need our, white brothers and sisters, our Asian brothers and sisters, our Mexican American brothers and sisters, all races, all nationalities, to come together and say, this is not just a Black thing, this is an American thing, this is a human thing. And I loved it. I saw on social media, they were marching in New Zealand.